Evans, CSM pilot, did not walk on the Moon. Which manned spaceflight was the longest?
Dr. Valerij Polyakov manned a flight to the space station Mir on January 8, 1994. He returned aboard Soyuz TM-20 on March 22, 1995, making the total time in space equal 438 days and 18 hours.
What was the first element to be discovered?
Phosphorus was first discovered by German chemist Hennig Brand, c. 1630 c. 1710, in 1669 when he extracted a waxy white substance from urine that glowed in the dark. But Brand did not publish his findings. In 1680, phosphorus was rediscovered by the English chemist Robert Boyle.
How is arithmetic different from mathematics?
Arithmetic is the study of positive integers, i.e., 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, manipulated with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and the use of the results in daily life. Mathematics is the study of shape, arrangement, and quantity. It is traditionally viewed as consisting of three fields: algebra, analysis, and geometry. But any lines of division have evaporated because the fields are now so interrelated.
Has the United States selected a national insect?
No, the United States does not have a national insect. Congress did consider naming the monarch butterfly as the national insect, but the legislation did not pass.
What is the difference between an invertebrate and a vertebrate?
Invertebrates are animals that lack a backbone. Almost all animals, 99%, are invertebrates. Of the more than 1 million identified animals, only 52,000 have a vertebral column. These are referred to as vertebrates. Most biologists believe the millions of species that have yet to be discovered are exclusively invertebrates.
What are the alkali metals?
These are the elements at the left of the periodic table: lithium, Li, element 3, potassium, K, element 19, rubidium, Rb, element 37, cesium, Cs, element 55, francium, Fr, element 87, and sodium, Na, element 11. The alkali metals are sometimes called the sodium family of elements, or group I elements. Because of their great chemical reactivity, they easily form positive ions. None exists in nature in the elemental state.
Where is the rainiest place on earth?
The wettest place in the world is Mauzinram, India. With an average annual rainfall of 467.4 inches, 1,187 centimeters, per year. Second place is Tutunandu, Colombia. With an average annual rainfall of 463.4 inches, 1,177 centimeters, per year. It is estimated that Laro, Colombia receives 523.6 inches. 1,330 centimeters, of rain per year, but this amount has not been verified. The place that has the most rainy days per year is Mount Wailale on Kauai, Hawaii. It has up to 350 rainy days annually.
What are the steps of the scientific method?
Research scientists follow these steps: state a hypothesis, design an experiment to prove the hypothesis, assemble the materials and set up the experiment, do the experiment and collect data, analyze the data using quantitative methods, draw conclusions, write up and publish the results.
How does the emerald get its color?
Emerald is a variety of green beryl, B3Al2Si6018, that is colored by a trace of chromium, Cr, which replaces the aluminum, Al, in the beryl structure. Other green beryls exist, but if no chromium is present, they are, technically speaking, not emeralds.
What is Buckminster fullerene?
It is a large molecule in the shape of a soccer ball, containing 60 carbon atoms, whose structure is the shape of a truncated icosahedron, a hollow spherical object with 32 faces, 12 of them pentagons and the rest hexagons. This molecule was named Buckminster fullerene because of the structure's resemblance to the geodesic domes designed by American architect R. Buckminster Fuller, 1895 to 1983. The molecule was formed by vaporizing material from a graphite surface with a laser. Large molecules containing only carbon atoms have been known to exist around certain types of carbon-rich stars. Similar molecules are also thought to be present in soot, formed during the incomplete combustion of organic materials. Chemist Richard Smalley, 1943 to 2005, identified Buckminster fullerene in 1985 and speculated that it may be fairly common throughout the universe. Since that time, other stable, large, even-numbered carbon clusters have been produced. This new class of molecules has been called fullerenes. Since they all seem to have the structure of a geodesic dome, they are also popularly known as buckyballs. Buckminster fullerene, C60, seems to function as an insulator, conductor, semiconductor, and superconductor in various compounds. Although no practical application has yet to be developed for it or the other fullerenes, research is expected to result in new types of materials, lubricants, coatings, catalysts, electro-optical devices, and medical applications.
How many tornadoes occur in the United States each year?
There are about 1,000 tornadoes in the United States each year. Compiling an actual average is difficult since reporting methods have changed over the last several decades, so the officially recorded tornado climatologies are believed to be incomplete. Some tornadoes, especially ones that cause little or no damage in remote areas, may not be reported. The 3-year average for 2007 to 2009 is 1,316 tornadoes per year. The largest single outbreak of tornadoes occurred on April 3 and 4, 1974. 148 tornadoes were recorded in this super outbreak in the Great Plains and Midwestern states. 6 of these tornadoes had winds greater than 260 miles, 420 kilometers per hour, and some of them were the strongest ever recorded.
What is the composition of cigarette smoke?
Cigarette smoke contains about 4,000 chemicals. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, and nicotine are some of the major components, with lesser amounts of acetone, acetylene, formaldehyde, propane, hydrogen cyanide, toluene, and many others.
What is cogeneration?
Cogeneration is an energy production process involving the simultaneous generation of thermal steam or hot water, and electric energy by using a single primary heat source. By producing two kinds of useful fuels in the same facility, the net energy yield from the primary fuel increases from 30 to 35% to 80 to 90%. Cogeneration can result in significant cost savings and can reduce any possible environmental effects conventional energy production may produce. Cogeneration facilities have been installed at a variety of sites, including oil refineries, chemical plants, paper mills, utility complexes, and mining operations.
What is a control group?
A control group is the experimental group tested without changing the variable. For example, to determine the effect of temperature on seed germination. One group of seeds may be heated to a certain temperature. The percent of seeds in this group that germinates and the time it takes them to germinate is then compared to another group of seeds, the control group, that has not been heated. All other variables, such as light and water, will remain the same for each group.
What are the 7 endocrine glands?
The major endocrine glands include the pituitary, thyroid, parathyroids, adrenals, pancreas, testes, and ovaries. These glands secrete hormones into the blood system, which generally stimulate some change in metabolic activity. Pituitary secretes ACTH to stimulate the adrenal cortex, which produces aldosterone to control sodium and potassium reabsorption by the kidneys, FSH to stimulate gonad function and prolactin to stimulate milk secretion of breasts, TSH to stimulate thyroid gland to produce thyroxine, LH to stimulate ovulation in females and testosterone production in males, GH to stimulate general growth. Stores oxytocin for uterine contraction. Thyroid secretes triiodothyronine, T3, and thyroxine, T4, to stimulate metabolic rate, especially in growth and development, and secretes calcitonin to lower blood calcium levels. Parathyroids secrete hormone PTH to increase blood calcium levels, and stimulates calcium reabsorption in kidneys. Adrenals secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine to help the body cope with stress and raise blood pressure, heart rate, metabolic rate, blood sugar levels, etc. Aldosterone secreted by the adrenal cortex maintains sodium-potassium balance in kidneys, and cortisol helps the body adapt to stress, mobilizes fat, and raises blood sugar level. Pancreas secretes insulin to control blood sugar levels, stimulates glycogen production, fat storage, and protein synthesis. Glucagon secretion raises blood sugar level and mobilizes fat. Ovaries and testes secrete estrogens, progesterone, or testosterone to stimulate growth and reproductive processes.
Why do the leaves of the mimosa plant close in response to touch?
When a leaf of the mimosa plant, also known as the sensitive plant, is touched, a minute electric current is generated that is quickly transmitted to the cells at the base of each leaflet. As soon as the signal arrives to the cells, the water contained in the cells is released. Due to loss of water, the leaves collapse downward.
What is red tide and what causes it?
Red tide is a term used for a brownish or reddish discoloration occurring in ocean, river, or lake water. It is caused by the rapid reproduction of a variety of toxic organisms, especially the toxic red dinoflagellates, which are members of the genera Gymnotidum and Goniolax. Some red tides are harmless, but millions of fish may be killed during a bloom, as the buildup is called. Other red tides can poison shellfish and the birds or humans who eat the contaminated food. Scientists do not fully understand why the bloom occurs.
Where are viruses found?
Viruses lie dormant in any environment, land, soil, air, and on any material. They infect every type of cell, plant, animal, bacterial, and fungal.
What was the Scopes monkey trial?
John T. Scopes, 1900 to 1970, a high school biology teacher, was brought to trial by the state of Tennessee in 1925 for teaching the theory of evolution. He challenged a recent law passed by the Tennessee legislature that made it unlawful to teach in any public school any theory that denied the divine creation of man. He was convicted and sentenced, but the decision was reversed later and the law repealed in 1967. In the early 21st century, pressure against school boards still affects the teaching of evolution. Recent drives by anti-evolutionists either have tried to ban the teaching of evolution or have demanded equal time for special creation as described in the biblical book of Genesis. This has raised many questions about the separation of church and state. The teaching of controversial subjects in public schools, and the ability of scientists to communicate with the public. The gradual improvement of the fossil record, the result of comparative anatomy, and many other developments in biological science have contributed toward making evolutionary thinking more palatable. Many rock fossils either erode before they can be discovered, or they remain in places inaccessible to scientists. The value of fossils comes not only from the information they give us about the structures of those once living organisms, but the placement of common fossils in the geologic layers also gives researchers a method for dating other, lesser known, samples.
What is Bayesian mimicry?
In 1861 Henry Walter Bates, 1825 to 1892, a British naturalist, proposed that a non-toxic species can evolve, especially in color and color pattern, to look or act like a toxic or unpalatable species in order to avoid being eaten by a predator. The classic example is the viceroy butterfly, which resembles the unpalatable monarch butterfly. In another example, the larva of the hawk moth puffs up its head and thorax when disturbed. looking like the head of a small poisonous snake, complete with eyes. The mimicry even involves behavior. The larva weaves its head back and forth and hisses like a snake. This is called Bachian mimicry.
What are some common top-level domain, TLD, suffixes?
Common top-level domain suffixes are, top-level domain, TLD, meaning of the suffix. Commercial organization, business, or company. Edu educational institution.org nonprofit organization. Sometimes used by other sites, .gov US government agency ILUS military agency ET network organizations.
Where is the circle of fire?
The belt of volcanoes bordering the Pacific Ocean is often called the Circle of Fire or the Ring of Fire. Earth's crust is composed of 15 pieces, called plates, which float on the partially molten layer below them. Most volcanoes, earthquakes, and mountain building occur along the unstable plate boundaries. The circle of fire marks the boundary between the plate underlying the Pacific Ocean and the surrounding plates. It runs up the west coast of the Americas from Chile to Alaska, through the Andes Mountains. Central America, Mexico, California, the Cascade Mountains, and the Aleutian Islands. Then down the east coast of Asia from Siberia to New Zealand, through Kamchatka, the Kuril Islands, Japan. The Philippines, Celebes, New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, New Caledonia, and New Zealand. Of the 850 active volcanoes in the world, over 75% of them are part of the Circle of Fire.
Which plants are poisonous to cats?
Certain common houseplants are poisonous to cats: caladium, elephant's ears, Dieffenbachia, dumb cane. Euphorbia pulcherrima, poinsettia, hedera, true ivy, mistletoe, oleander, philodendron, prunus laurocerasus. Common or cherry laurel, rhododendron, azalea, Solanum capuscastrum, winter or false Jerusalem cherry.
What is unusual about the teeth of sharks?
Sharks were among the first vertebrates to develop teeth. The teeth are not set into the jaw but rather sit atop it. They are not firmly anchored and are easily lost. The teeth are arranged in 6 to 20 rows, with the ones in front doing the biting and cutting. Behind these teeth, others grow. When a tooth breaks or is worn down, a replacement moves forward. One shark may eventually develop and use more than 20,000 teeth in a lifetime.
Do identical twins have the same fingerprints?
No. Even identical twins have differences in their fingerprints, which, though subtle, can be discerned by experts.
What is the chemical used in watches to make them glow in the dark?
Generally, radioactive paints are used to make watch surfaces visible in the dark. These paints, which do not require activation by an outside light source, will glow for several years. In the past, radium was often the active substance used in luminescent paints for watch faces. However, the practice was discontinued when it was found to emit dangerous gamma rays. The radioactive materials used today give off much lower emissions, which are easily blocked by the glass or plastic covering the watch face. These substances include tritium, krypton-85, promethium-147, and thallium-204.
How has disposal of solid waste to landfill facilities changed?
Landfilling has been an essential component of waste management for several decades. In 1960, 94% of all garbage was sent to landfills. During the following decades, although the amount of municipal solid waste increased, the amount going to landfills decreased. During the years 1990 to 2008, the total amount of waste going to landfills decreased from 142.3 million tons to 135.1 million tons. Much of this decrease was due to an increased amount of waste being recycled. As of 2008, there were 1,812 landfills in the continental United States. Although the number of landfills in the United States has decreased, the average landfill size has increased. At the national level, capacity of existing landfills is sufficient.
What is cloud seeding?
Cloud seeding is an attempt to modify the weather to produce precipitation. A cloud contains water droplets and ice crystals. Precipitation occurs when the ice crystals grow large enough to fall as rain, snow, hail, or other precipitation. Unless the conditions are right for ice crystals to grow, precipitation does not occur. Cloud seeding is an attempt to convert the supercooled droplets of liquid water in a cloud to ice crystals. Dry ice, solid carbon dioxide, and silver iodide are the substances most often used to seed clouds to transform the water droplets to ice crystals. Seeding is most efficient when the seeding agent is dropped from an airplane on the top of a cloud.
What is the Hippocratic Oath?
The Hippocratic Oath is the traditional oath physicians take when they graduate from medical school. It can be traced back to the Greek physician and teacher Hippocrates, c. 460 B.C. 377 BCE. The oath reads as follows: I swear by Apollo the physician, by Aesculapius, Hygeia, and Panacea. And I take to witness all the gods, all the goddesses, to keep according to my ability and my judgment the following oath. To consider dear to me as my parents him who taught me this art. To live in common with him and if necessary to share my goods with him, to look upon his children as my own brothers. To teach them this art if they so desire without fee or written promise. To impart to my sons and the sons of the master who taught me and the disciples who have enrolled themselves and have agreed to rules of the profession, but to these alone, the precepts and the instruction. I will prescribe regimes for the good of my patients according to my ability and my judgment and never to harm anyone. To please no one will I prescribe a deadly drug, nor give advice which may cause his death. Nor will I give a woman a pessary to procure abortion. But I will preserve the purity of my life and my art. I will not cut for stone, even for patients in whom the disease is manifest. I will leave this operation to be performed by practitioners, specialists in this art. In every house where I come I will enter only for the good of my patients, keeping myself far from all intentional ill-doing and all seduction, and especially from the pleasures of love with women or with men, be they free or slaves. All that may come to my knowledge in the exercise of my profession or outside of my profession or in daily commerce with men, which ought not to be spread abroad, I will keep secret and will never reveal. If I keep this oath faithfully, may I enjoy life and practice my art, respected by all men and in all times, but if I swerve from it or violate it, may the reverse be my lot. The oath varies slightly in wording among different sources, and many medical schools have adopted modern versions of the oath.
What is the environmental impact of disposing electronics in landfills?
The EPA believes that the disposal of electronics in properly managed municipal solid waste landfills does not threaten human health and the environment. However, recycling electronics will decrease the demand for additional mining of valuable resources and manufacturing new products. Recycling electronics recovers valuable materials, such as copper and engineered plastics, and as a result reduces greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, saves energy, and saves resources by extracting fewer raw materials from the earth.
What is cell cloning and how is it used in scientific research?
Cell cloning is the process by which an exact copy is made of a cell. This cellular process is known as mitosis and is required for the growth and repair of multicellular organisms. Different types of cells in the body differ in their ability to perform mitosis. Some cells, like skin cells, produce clones quite often. Others, like those of the nervous system, will not reproduce after they have reached maturity and have differentiated. The scientific purpose of cloning is to produce many copies of certain types of cells, which can then be used for a variety of purposes, like basic research or the growth of replacement organs.
Was Polaris always the North Star?
Earth has had several North Stars. Earth slowly wobbles on its axis as it spins. This motion is called precession. Earth traces a circle in the sky over a period of 26,000 years. In pharaonic times the North Star was Thuban, today it is Polaris, around 14,000 CE it will be Vega.
What are the major groups of segmented worms?
Members of the phylum Annelida, the segmented worms, have bilateral symmetry and a tubular body that may have 100 to 175 ring-like segments. The three classes of segmented worms are, 1. Polychaeta, the sandworms and tube worms. 2. Oligochaeta, the earthworms, and 3. Hirudinea, the leeches.
Which tree that is native to the United States almost became extinct due to fungus?
The American chestnut, Castanea dentata, was widespread across eastern North America until the early 1900s. It was one of the most important trees of the eastern hardwood forest and made up almost half of the population of trees in central and southern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and southern New England. In its entire range, the species dominated the deciduous forests, making up almost 1/4 of the trees. The fungus Cryphonectria parasitica, commonly known as the chestnut blight, caused the near extinction of the American chestnut tree in North America. Through ongoing genetic studies and improvements in plant breeding techniques, the American Chestnut Foundation is working to restore this tree to its native range within the woodlands of the eastern United States.
Who invented the ancient Chinese earthquake detector?
The detector, invented by Zhang Heng, 78 to 139 C. E, around 132 CE, was a copper-domed urn with dragon's heads circling the outside, each containing a bronze ball. Inside the dome was suspended a pendulum that would swing when the ground shook and knock a ball from the mouth of a dragon into the waiting open mouth of a bronze toad below. The ball made a loud noise and signaled the occurrence of an earthquake. Knowing which ball had been released, one could determine the direction of the earthquake's epicenter. The point on Earth's surface directly above the quake's point of origin.
What is solder?
Solder is an alloy of two or more metals used for joining other metals together. One example of solder is half and half, composed of equal parts of lead and tin. Other metals used in solder are aluminum, cadmium, zinc, nickel, gold, silver, palladium, bismuth, copper, and antimony. Various melting points to suit the work are obtained by varying the proportions of the metals. Solder is an ancient joining method, mentioned in the Bible, Isaiah 41:7. There is evidence of its use in Mesopotamia some 5,000 years ago, and later in Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Use of numerous types of solder is currently wide and varied, and future use looks bright as well. As long as circuitry based on electrical and magnetic impulses and composed of a combination of conductors, semiconductors, and insulators continues to be in use, solder will remain indispensable.
What first aid remedies may be used for bee stings?
If a person is allergic to bee stings, he or she should seek professional medical care immediately. For persons not allergic to bee stings, the following steps may be taken. The stinger should be removed by scraping it with a knife. A long fingernail, or a credit card, rather than by trying to pull it out. A wet aspirin may be rubbed on the area of the sting to help neutralize some of the inflammatory agents in the venom. Unless the person is allergic or sensitive to aspirin taken by mouth. A paste made of meat tenderizer, or another product that contains papain, mixed with water will relieve the pain. Adults may take an antihistamine along with a mild pain reliever such as aspirin, ibuprofen, or acetaminophen.
What are the longest rivers in the world?
The two longest rivers in the world are the Nile in Africa and the Amazon in South America. However, which is the longest is a matter of some debate. The Amazon has several mouths that widen toward the South Atlantic. So the exact point where the river ends is uncertain. If the Para estuary, the most distant mouth, is counted, its length is approximately 4,195 miles, 6,750 kilometers. The length of the Nile as surveyed before the loss of a few miles of meanders due to the formation of Lake Nasser behind the Aswan Dam was 4,145 miles, 6,670 kilometers. The table below lists the 5 longest river systems in the world. Exact figures vary, depending on sources.
What is an irrational number?
Numbers that cannot be expressed as an exact ratio are called irrational numbers. Numbers that can be expressed as an exact ratio are called rational numbers. For instance, 1/2, or 50% of something, is rational. However, 1.61803, cp. 3.14159, ti, 1.41421, \2, are irrational. History claims that Pythagoras in the 6th century BCE first used the term. When he discovered that the square root of 2 could not be expressed as a fraction.
What is meningitis?
Meningitis is an infection or inflammation of the meninges. Meningitis is most often caused by a bacterial or viral infection. Although certain fungal infections and tumors may also cause meningitis. The usual symptoms and signs of meningitis are sudden fever, severe headache, and a stiff neck. In more severe cases, neurological symptoms may include nausea and vomiting, confusion and disorientation, drowsiness, sensitivity to bright light, and poor appetite. Early treatment of bacterial meningitis with antibiotics is important to reduce the risk of dying from the disease.
What is the rate of species extinction in the tropical rainforests?
Biologists estimate that tropical rainforests contain approximately 1/2 of Earth's animal and plant species. These forests contain 155,000 of the 250,000 known plant species and innumerable insect and animal species. Nearly 100 species become extinct each day. This is equivalent to 4 species per hour. At the current rates, 5 to 10% of the tropical rainforest species will become extinct every decade.
What are some practical applications of superconductivity?
A variety of uses have been proposed for superconductivity in fields as diverse as electronics, transportation, and power. Research continues to develop more powerful, more efficient electric motors and devices that measure extremely small magnetic fields for medical diagnosis. The field of electric power transmission has much to gain by developing superconducting materials since 15% of the electricity generated must be used to overcome the resistance of traditional copper wire. More powerful electromagnets will be utilized to build high-speed magnetically levitated trains, known as maglev.
What is the food guidance system?
The food guidance system, My Pyramid, is an educational tool to help individuals implement the dietary guidelines for Americans published jointly by the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. The current system maintains the shape of the familiar food guide pyramid, but it is personalized for age, sex, and individual physical activity levels. The new pyramid symbol in My Pyramid features 6 vertical color bands representing the 5 food groups and oils. Each food group narrows toward the top to indicate moderation. The stylized symbol of a person climbing the steps is to encourage physical activity.
When were glass blocks invented?
Dating back to 1847, glass blocks were originally used as telegraph insulators. They were much smaller and thicker than structural glass blocks and were used mostly in the southeastern United States until eventually replaced with porcelain and other types of insulating materials. Glass building bricks were invented in Europe in the early 1900s as thin blocks of glass supported by a grid. Structural glass blocks have been manufactured in the United States since. Pittsburgh-based Pittsburgh Corning began producing them in 1938. Blocks made at that time measured approximately 8 inches. 20 centimeters, square by nearly 5 inches. 13 centimeters, in depth, and cast a greenish tint as light transmitted through it. Today's glass blocks can be a square foot in size, much more uniformly shaped, and available in many different sizes, textures, and colors.
What is the sieve of Eratosthenes?
Eratosthenes, c. 285 c. 205 BCE, was a Greek mathematician and philosopher who devised a method to identify or sift out prime numbers from a list of natural numbers arranged in order. It is a simple method, although it becomes tedious to identify large prime numbers. The steps of the sieve are: write all natural numbers in order, omitting 1. Circle the number 2 and then cross out every other number. Every second number will be a multiple of 2 and hence is not a prime number. Circle the number 3 and then cross out every third number which will be a multiple of 3 and therefore, not a prime number. The numbers that are circled are prime and those that are crossed out are composite numbers.
Who developed plant breeding into a modern science?
Luther Burbank, 1849 to 1926, developed plant breeding as a modern science. His breeding techniques included crosses of plant strains native to North America and foreign strains. He obtained seedlings that were then grafted onto fully developed plants for an appraisal of hybrid characteristics. His keen sense of observation allowed him to recognize desirable characteristics, enabling him to select only varieties that would be useful. One of his earliest hybridization successes was the Burbank potato, from which more than 800 new strains and varieties of plants including 113 varieties of plums and prunes were developed. More than 20 of these plums and prunes are still commercially important today.
What is meant by the wind chill factor?
The wind chill factor, or wind chill index, is a number that expresses the cooling effect of moving air at different temperatures. It indicates in a general way how many calories of heat are carried away from the surface of the body. The National Weather Service began reporting the equivalent wind chill temperature along with the actual air temperature in 1973. For years it was believed that the index overestimated the wind's cooling effect on skin. In 2001 to 2002 a new wind chill index was instituted, and additional corrections are expected in the next few years. Below is the official wind chill chart from the National Weather Service as of 2009.
What is the origin of the expression "do not fold, spindle, or mutilate"?
This is the inscription on an IBM punched card. Frequently, office workers organize papers and forms by stapling or folding them together, or by impaling them on a spindle. Because Hall Erith, punched, card readers scan uniform rectangular holes in a precise arrangement. Any damage to the physical card makes it unusable. In the 1950s and 1960s, when punched cards became widespread, manufacturers printed a warning on each card. IBM's "do not fold, spindle, or mutilate" was the best known. In 1964, the student revolution at the University of California, Berkeley, used the phrase as a symbol of authority and regimentation.
What are the major functions of the respiratory system?
The major functions of the respiratory system are: gas exchange. The respiratory system allows oxygen in the air to enter the blood and carbon dioxide to leave the blood and enter the air. The cardiovascular system transports oxygen from the lungs to the cells of the body and carbon dioxide from the cells of the body to the lungs. Regulation of blood pH, which can be altered by changes in blood carbon dioxide levels. Voice production as air moves past the vocal cords to make sound and speech. Olfaction, or the sense of smell, occurs when airborne molecules are drawn into the nasal cavity. Innate immunity, providing protection against some microorganisms by preventing their entry into the body or by removing them from respiratory surfaces.
What is the longest muscle in the human body?
The longest muscle is the sartorius, which runs from the waist to the knee. Its purpose is to flex the hip and knee.
How long has the abacus been used?
The abacus grew out of early counting boards, with hollows in a board holding pebbles or beads used to calculate. It has been documented in Mesopotamia back to around 3500 BCE. The current form, with beads sliding on rods, dates back at least to 15th century China. Before the use of decimal number systems, which allowed the familiar paper and pencil methods of calculation. The abacus was essential for almost all multiplication and division. Unlike the modern calculator, the abacus does not perform any mathematical computations. The person using the abacus performs calculations in his/her head relying on the abacus as a physical aid to keep track of the sums. It has become a valuable tool for teaching arithmetic to blind students.
Can a person using an abacus calculate more rapidly than someone using a calculator?
In 1946, the Tokyo staff of Stars and Stripes sponsored a contest between a Japanese abacus expert and an American accountant using the best electric adding machine then available. The abacus operator proved faster in all calculations except the multiplication of very large numbers. While today's electronic calculators are much faster and easier to use than the adding machines used in 1946, undocumented tests still show that an expert can add and subtract faster on an abacus than someone using an electronic calculator. It also allows long division and multiplication problems with more digits than a hand calculator can accommodate.
What were Benjamin Franklin's contributions to meteorology?
Benjamin Franklin, who is said to have discovered electricity by flying a kite in a storm, made the important discovery that low-pressure systems caused the atmosphere to circulate in a rotating pattern. He made this discovery in 1743, after unsuccessfully attempting to view an eclipse on October 21. There was a storm in Philadelphia at the time, but he later learned that the skies were clear in Boston that day. He then found out that the storm that had been in Philadelphia traveled to Boston the next day. From this information, he surmised that the storm was traveling in a clockwise manner from southwest to northeast. Franklin thus concluded that the low-pressure system was causing the storm to move in this manner. Severe thunderstorm warning, issued when either a severe thunderstorm is indicated by Radar or a spotter reports a thunderstorm producing hail 0.75 inch, 2 centimeters in diameter and / or winds equal to or exceeding 58 miles per hour, 93 kilometers per hour. Lightning frequency is not a criterion for issuing a severe thunderstorm warning. It is advisable to seek safe shelter immediately when a severe thunderstorm warning is issued. Tornado watch, issued when conditions are favorable for the development of tornadoes in the area. They normally are issued well in advance of the actual occurrence of severe weather for a duration of 4 to 8 hours. Tornado warning, issued when a tornado is indicated by radar or sighted by spotters. People in the affected area should seek safe shelter immediately. They are usually issued for around 30 minutes. Wind advisory, issued when there are sustained winds of 25 to 39 miles per hour. 40 to 63 kilometers per hour, and / or gusts to 57 miles per hour, 92 kilometers per hour. Winter weather advisory, issued when a low-pressure system produces a combination of winter weather. Snow, freezing rain, sleet, that presents a hazard, but does not meet warning criteria. Winter storm watch, issued when there is the potential for heavy snow or significant ice accumulations, usually at least 24 to 36 hours in advance. The criteria for this watch can vary from place to place. Winter storm warning, issued when a winter storm is producing or is forecast to produce heavy snow or significant ice accumulations. The criteria for this warning can vary from place to place.
What is air pollution?
Air pollution is the contamination of Earth's atmosphere at levels high enough to harm humans, others, organisms, or other materials. The major air pollutants are particulate matter, ozone, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, and lead. Primary air pollutants, including carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter, enter the atmosphere directly. Secondary air pollutants are harmful chemicals that form from other substances released into the atmosphere. Ozone and sulfur trioxide are examples of secondary air pollutants.
What is limnology?
Limnology is the study of freshwater ecosystems, especially lakes, ponds, and streams. These ecosystems are more fragile than marine environments since they are subject to great extremes in temperature. F. A. Farrell, 1848–1931, a Swiss professor, has been called the father of limnology.
Without these organisms, what is a biogeochemical cycle?
The elements that organisms need most: carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Cycle through the physical environment, the organism, and then back to the environment. Each element has a distinctive cycle that depends on the physical and chemical properties of the element. Examples of biogeochemical cycles include the carbon and nitrogen cycles, both of which have a prominent gaseous phase. Examples of biogeochemical cycles with a prominent geologic phase include phosphorus and sulfur, where a large portion of the element may be stored in ocean sediments. Examples of cycles with a prominent atmospheric phase include carbon and nitrogen. These biogeochemical cycles involve biological, geologic, and chemical interactions.
How can the entire genome fit into the nucleus of a cell?
The average nucleus has a diameter of less than 5 micrometers. And the DNA, eukaryotic, has a length of 1 to 2 micrometers. In order to fit DNA into a nucleus, DNA and proteins are tightly packed to form threads called chromatin. These threads are so thick that they actually become visible with a light microscope.
What is the difference between a reptile and an amphibian?
Reptiles are clad in scales, shields, or plates, and their toes have claws. Amphibians have moist, glandular skins, and their toes lack claws. Reptile eggs have a thick, hard, or parchment-like shell that protects the developing embryo from moisture loss, even on dry land. The eggs of amphibians lack this protective outer covering and are always laid in water or in damp places. Young reptiles are miniature replicas of their parents in general appearance, if not always in coloration and pattern. Juvenile amphibians pass through a larval, usually aquatic, stage before they metamorphose, change in form and structure, into the adult form. Reptiles include alligators, crocodiles, turtles, and snakes. Amphibians include salamanders, toads, and frogs.
How many of the medications used today are derived from plants?
Of the more than 250,000 known plant species, less than 1% have been thoroughly tested for medical applications. Yet out of this tiny portion have come 25% of our prescription medicines. The U.S. National Cancer Institute has identified 3,000 plants from which anti-cancer drugs are or can be made. This includes ginseng, Panax quinquefolius, Asian mayapple, Podophyllum hexandrum, Western yew, Taxus brevifolia, and rosy periwinkle. 70% of these 3,000 come from rainforests, which also are a source of countless other drugs for diseases and infections. Rainforest plants are rich in so-called secondary metabolites, particularly alkaloids, which biochemists believe the plants produce to protect them from disease and insect attack. However, with the current rate of rainforest destruction, raw materials for future medicines are certainly being lost. Also, as tribal groups disappear, their knowledge of the properties and uses of these plant species will be lost.
Besides the Cullinan diamonds, what are the largest precious stones?
The largest ruby is a 8,500 carat stone that is 5.5 inches, 14 centimeters, tall, carved to resemble the Liberty Bell. The largest star ruby is the 6,465 carat eminent star from India that has a 6-line star. The largest cut emerald was found in Carniba, Brazil, in August 1974. It is 86,136 carats. A 2,302 carat sapphire from Anakie, Queensland, Australia, was carved into a 1,318 carat head of Abraham Lincoln, making it the largest carved sapphire. The Lone Star, at 9,719.5 carats, is the largest star sapphire. The largest natural pearl is the Pearl of Lao Tzu, also called the Pearl of Allah. Found in May 1934 in the shell of a giant clam at Palawan, Philippines, the pearl weighs 14 pounds, 1 ounce, 6.4 kilograms.
What was the first National Science Institute?
On March 3, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln signed a congressional charter creating the National Academy of Sciences, which stipulated that the Academy shall, whenever called upon by any department of the government, investigate, examine, experiment, and report upon any subject of science or art. The actual expense of such investigations, examinations, experiments, and reports to be paid from appropriations which may be made for the purpose. But the Academy shall receive no compensation whatever for any services to the government of the United States. The Academy's first president was Alexander Dallas Back, 1806 to 1867. Today, the Academy and its sister organizations, the National Academy of Engineering, established in 1964, and the Institute of Medicine, established in 1970, serve as the country's preeminent sources of advice on science and technology and their bearing on the nation's welfare. The National Research Council was established in 1916 by the National Academy of Sciences at the request of President Woodrow Wilson, 1856 to 1924, to bring into cooperation existing governmental, educational, industrial, and other research organizations, with the object of encouraging the investigation of natural phenomena. The increased use of scientific research in the development of American industries. The employment of scientific methods in strengthening the national defense. and such other applications of science as will promote the national security and welfare. The National Academy of Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, and the Institute of Medicine work through the National Research Council of the United States, one of world's most important advisory bodies. More than 6,000 scientists, engineers, industrialists, and health and other professionals participating in numerous committees comprise the National Research Council.
What was the contribution of Drive Gorgas to the building of the Panama Canal?
Dr. William C. Gorgas, 1854–1920, brought the endemic diseases of Panama under control by destroying mosquito breeding grounds, virtually eliminating yellow fever and malaria. His work was probably more essential to the completion of the canal than any engineering technique.
What is the role of the small intestine in nutrient processing?
The small intestine is the site of most nutrient processing in the body. The first step is to break down the large complex structures of all nutrients, including carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, into smaller units. Most absorption of these nutrients also takes place in the small intestine.
What is cell culture?
Cell culture is the cultivation of cells, outside the body, from a multicellular organism. This technique is very important to biotechnology processes because most research programs depend on the ability to grow cells outside the parent animal. Cells grown in culture usually require very special conditions, e.g., specific pH, temperature, nutrients, and growth factors. Cells can be grown in a variety of containers, ranging from a simple petri dish to large-scale cultures in roller bottles, which are bottles that are rolled gently to keep culture medium flowing over the cells.